Okay, Gus, you're live now. Okay. Are you live on TikTok? Grand evening, grand evening, grand evening. We are going to give y'all about 2 minutes to come in. Professor Gus will be reading the book, The Art of Passing the Buck.
All right, now we live on TikTok.
Okay. Grand evening, grand evening, grand evening, TikTok. We will be waiting about 2 minutes before, so we can let y'all in. Professor Gus will be reading The Art of Passing the Buck. It is a guide to building up your trust and making sure that it's legit and unpenetrable from the government. He'll read about an hour or hour and a half today, and we'll go, I guess, every day he feels like it until he's finished.
All right. So yeah, some people.
Don't worry about people coming in. They're gonna come in the whole time you're talking. They got 2 minutes, and then you start reading.
Okay.
Let's see. This is different than the phone because the phone has a clock where it says how long you already been on.
Oh yeah,
I don't see that.
I don't know if it's mad.
Don't start clicking nothing though, because we'll be back where we started. Leave it alone. Okay. All right. Go ahead. That's been 2 minutes.
Good. All right.
And just put your headset on because you talk so damn low.
Got it.
And I would encourage you to not do this and do this
Yeah.
for the sound frequency. Okay.
Appreciate it. All right, y'all, we live. So, all right. Hopefully it's coming through clear. We're just gonna start at the beginning. So I'm gonna go for an hour and we'll just see how far we get within that hour. If we get to a good place to stop. So the name of this book, The Art of Passing the Buck. I'm gonna read to you as if though I was reading it myself. So I'm just gonna read the front and the back because that's how I would read it if I was reading the book myself. I would just pick up the front with The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1. The Secrets of Wills and Trust Revealed. Author's name is Charles R. Arthur. Okay, so I flip the book over to the back and it says, baffled by inheritance? Need to leave a legacy for loved ones or favorite causes? About to inherit and afraid it will slip through your fingers. Intimidated by words like intestate or other legal jargon, where someone would explain things to you in simple English. You need the art of passing the buck. When it comes to inheritance, not only is ignorance not bliss, it can be ruinous, not just in tax liability. If you fail to plan properly, make poor choices, or cut corners in passing on your legacy, you can destroy your family. Maximize your chance of getting it right by drawing on decades of painstaking research that went into the art of passing the buck. The art of passing the buck discusses the advantages, disadvantages, and tax implications of your potential choices, as well as presenting hard-won lessons in effective trust organization, trust administration, and pitfalls to avoid. This book describes the origins, history, and uses of trust, some surprising, some surprising. The real surprise, though, is the technique once exclusive to the rich and their favorite minions are now, with proper mentoring, education, and support, available to you. Enjoy real peace of mind from knowing you and yours are cared for, your privacy guarded, your wealth not only protected from lawsuits, liens, and seizures, but tended by shrewd trustees sworn to increase it. All this while legally reducing your taxes now, legally avoiding inheritance tax on your estate when you pass, and keeping your estate and your heirs out of probate court. This is why we wrote The Art of Passing the Buck, to unmask what has been carefully hidden and guarded for centuries, to show you how the system really works, whom it serves, and what you can do about it. Dare to know the truth. So that's the rear cover. So I was just picking this book. I was just picking this book up. Hold on, let me drink something. I didn't realize it's gonna be this parched. Okay. All right. If I was just picking this book up, like I said, I would read it front to back just like that, just to see where the author is, coming from. Also to see a little bit about what the book is about. So if I had to guess, just from reading that, I'd say that the author is trying to explain to me how those that have it have been using certain techniques to keep it, to have it and keep it, and that these techniques are now available to me through this book. That's how I would read that. All right. So here we go. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1. The Secrets of Wills and Trust Revealed by Charles Arthur. I'll skip over the publishing. We'll get to the inside. Okay, here we go. Warning. This information was created to help you, the reader, to make better choices for your progeny, loved ones, and causes you support. This book does not provide you with the paperwork to create any will or trust. We expect you will consult with professionals in a, in estate planning before you make final decisions that affect the lives of the people who depend on you. Likewise, for you who are beneficiaries, we present key questions for you to ask about your inheritance. You will find this book can aid you. We are not offering legal advice. Information has been gathered from many sources to create this book. We do not claim to have all the answers. We present this view to add to your capacity to make informed choices. So that's the warning, and I appreciate that from the author, Charles, Mr. Charles. I'll just call him Mr. Charles. I appreciate that. Starting off by saying this is not legal advice. It's probably the best thing that anybody can say, because one of the things that we come across in this is that there's so much information out there that you can get drowned in over information. And what you should know is, if you're not a lawyer or you don't get information from a lawyer, you or a CPA, then you should be weary of that information. All right. Special note to lawyers and CPAs. Although designed specifically to be easy to read and to understand, we fully recognize that some of what we cover will, of necessity, not just be technical and detailed, but may be new, even alien to you. For these reasons, we have elected to place a meaty material, both legal and historical, in the appendices in Volume 2, or in Volume 2, sorry. Here you will find case sites, IRS, and legal opinions, and much more. Enjoy then the fruits of our research into obscure texts, little known books in the midst of history. All right, so to me, That was the end of that page. So to me, that's again sort of a disclaimer. It's not, they're not claiming to have the answers to anything. They're just saying that for those people who are professionals and who would look into this, anything that purports itself to be a help to you in terms of your estate planning, anyone who is a professional would have an opinion. They would weigh in, obviously, right? Just like anything else. If I told you I wasn't a master electrician, and I could build such and such with my, electrician skills, you would want to see some type of proof of someone else or some type of verification, either of my work or someone who can at least testify that, yeah, what he's saying is true. So this is like to me that disclaimer that says to those who are professionals, we've got plenty of information here that is factual. You can go ahead and pour over it, and you'll see that what we're saying is valid. That's what that sounds like to me. All right, so next page. This is a preface page again. Um, do not put your this. It starts with a quote or has only on the page just a single quote. Do not put your trust in money, but put your money in trust. And that is a quote by Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. He was alive between 1809 and 1894. Um, what that says to me immediately is that whatever principles this author is trying to get me to understand or impart to me is something that has been here for a while, because that guy was living in between the time of 1809 and 1894. That means he died before the current, modern time that we live in. So I would say, okay, maybe this has some validity. As reading it, that's what I would be looking at. All right, acknowledgments. The pen name Charles Arthur represents a group of people contributing to this work, either through sharing direct experience with us, by writing articles, or taking part in an interview. Okay, um, that's important to me as the reader. That's important because this is not one author. All right, that's super huge, super important to me. It's just my opinion, but to me, that's super huge because that means that there were a collective of people, more than one person who sat down and put all these ideas together, right? That's important. Um, the information is not only built on experience, but decades of extensive research. Much of this information has been expressed in various newsletters and documents published by different trust organizations, and a stream of documents published, I'm sorry, excuse me, and a stream of articles and court cases. Not only do we include interviews, but we also describe experiences. These resources have been summarized and presented by those who can deal in the trust world, thus creating a broad database now available in the art of passing the buck. We thank the editor who worked with our team of people while he researched and wrote portions of the new text himself since receiving the assignment. He raised and addressed many issues, the inclusion of which improved this book. He labored to ex- he labored to excellent he labored to excellent effect to make a complex, scary, often forbidden topic so user friendly that one of our assistants volunteered she enjoyed reading it and learned a lot from it. Since readability and user friendliness were major objectives in this first of its kind book, aimed not just at the legal and financial communities, but at most American families, we are thrilled by her reaction. The resulting two-volume set will, we firmly hope, open eyes and shake the complacent to their very roots. We aim to give the American people the information, the options, and the power once once the sole province of the super rich and others who are well connected. We give thanks to the fine work and of all the attorneys who continuously grapple with the difficulties of this subject, and for those who make special effort to keep others in the legal community informed. References to those who work in the legal community, though, do not imply or infer they contributed to this book in any other way than what they published and we used as references. Again, they're reminding you that um, this is not legal advice. It's just a compilation of experiences, and they're sharing that with you through this book. And that's underneath the name Charles Arthur. I'll just say Mr. Charles. But when I say that, I'm not speaking of one person because they already told me it's not one person, but a group of people. So remember, just keep that in mind. All right. So where are we going? Um, Next page. We would be remiss if we did not acknowledge how much we gain through reading the book, The Constitutional Common Law Trust. And it has a footnote here. I'll go down to it to read it. James Mathers, The Constitutional Common Law Trust. Excuse me. Renaissance Publishers, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1997. When I'm reading the book, I will stop and go down to those little footnotes because it's there for a reason. You know what I mean? If you're reading any book and they stop you and put one of those little footnotes there, they're drawing your attention to that because it's an important piece of information. So go down and read it. So that's what I just read. And what I'm getting from that is that the the group, as they said, um, was influenced by this particular book, James Mathers, The Constitutional Common Law Trust. Why is that important? Because if I'm reading the book, or if I'm going to quote from a book, I should know the people who wrote the book or the person who wrote the book. I should know what their influences are. That's just common sense. I should know what made you say that, or at least what influenced you in that way. All right. So within those pages, we had our first glimmer of many aspects of the common law trust, which until that point was lost in obscurity, vagueness, and the confusion caused by complicated legal jargon. Those who were most directly involved in creating the art of passing the buck drew on the wisdom and the courage of the nation's founders who fought tyranny and sought to preserve privacy. We are especially thankful to the Quakers, see Appendix A, whose great contributions seem to have been lost in history. It is a thanks, particularly to those who gave what President Lincoln aptly called in his Gettysburg Address the last full measure of devotion, that we still have the right to contract and thus can write this set of books. And what I get from that was, I guess this is my opinion, guys. I guess what they're trying to say is, huh, okay. I mean, they tied together the Quakers. See Appendix A. I think I want to see the Appendix A. What do you mean there? Before I make an opinion, I want to be informed. We're especially thankful to the Quakers, see Appendix A, whose great contributions seem to be lost in history. So that I'm trying to get how they're tying the Quakers into President Lincoln and then our ability to write contracts. Um, I just want to know what are they talking about. Let's see here. Where's the appendix? You scroll down to the table of contents, and I'm looking for appendix A. Okay. All right, here we go. Appendix A looks like it's on page 289. Apprentice and the Quakers, page 289. So I'm gonna scroll down to page 289, and this is just me, y'all. This is how I read. So if I want to know something, I want to know it thoroughly. I'm not gonna skip anything because chances are, when you open your mouth to say something, you probably missed a step or a detail which would have informed your opinion. You know what I'm saying? So why not take a couple extra steps to make sure that you know what you're talking about? That's all. Just like the authors of this book said, we're in charge of our families and our loved ones that depend on us. So you owe it to them to be thorough. All right, so I'm scrolling down. I've got Appendix A, and it says Appendix A: Understanding Jurisdiction by Anonymous. That's funny. All right. Um, the Apprentice and the Quakers. All right, and then it's actually got a lot going on here. It's a few pages. There's one, two, three, four, five. It's a few actually. It's a lot. I'm trying to see how this ties in, but there is okay. Appendix A is all about the Quakers. It's like 10 pages. So I thought I would be able to gather some quick information by checking the appendix, but in fact, there's a whole set of information they want me to understand in order to understand the next part. So again, this is just me. If I'm reading this book and I want to take this book with a grain of salt, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to stop at that paragraph. I'm going to go down to what is Appendix A? I don't know what that is. Let me go find it. As soon as I find it and I say, damn, it's 10 pages. That's not an appendix, that's another book. For most people, that's where they stop. So you you'll hear people talking a lot about what they think they know. But I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. Looking at that appendix and seeing that that's what I gotta read, my first instinct is to not read it. I ain't gonna hold you. But again, like authors said, if this is about something serious like my legacy, nah, I gotta go ahead and put my big boy pants on and dig right in and read that because I want to know what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is at the end of the day. It's no one going to tell us. We got to find it ourselves. All right. So if I'm reading this again, we ain't even gotten to the book yet. We still reading the preface page, and this is preface page 8. So I'm going back. It says those who were mostly directly involved in creating the art of the past in the book drew on wisdom and courage of the nation's founders, who fought tyranny and sought to preserve privacy. Mhm. Okay. We are especially thankful to the Quakers, see Appendix A, whose great contribution seems to have been lost in history. Now I got questions. What did the Quakers do? And if you're reading, you should have questions too. It is thanks particularly to those who gave what President Lincoln aptly called in his Gettysburg Address the last full measure of devotion, that we still have the right to contract and thus can write this in the books. So again, it seems to me that they're drawing on the forefathers that started this country and the right to be able to do things such as contract and because of that right to be able to make contracts, they were able to write this book and share it with us. So that's the short of it. But again, I'm not skipping over what does the Quakers have to do with this? So I'm gonna scroll down. I'm scrolling down to Appendix A. Where did it go? Page 198. 198. Okay. Now, even though this seems like a whole nother book, I want to know what are they talking about? And what does the Quakers have to do with it? All right. Sorry, y'all, for the pause and the break, but I'm scrolling because I think I may have missed it. Yeah, that's a chapter. Sorry about that. Appendix. Come on. Where you at? Chapter 20. Oh, shucks. Where we at? All right. I gotta go back to the top. See, this is the hard part. It's the work that nobody wants to do. Is being thorough. And this thing said, see Appendix A, right? All right, and then I went down to the table of contents because I don't even know what page is Appendix A even on. So, table of contents, okay, tells me there are, looks like 25 chapters, a glossary. Appendix A is on 289. All right. And I'm going down to 289. 298. All right. Scroll down to 290, 289. And I got Appendix A. Okay, here we go. Understanding Jurisdiction by Anonymous. The Apprentice and the Quakers, an Oath. In all of history, there's been one successful protest against an income tax. It is little understood in that light, primarily because the remnants of a protest group still exist, but no longer wish to appear to be anti-government. It has anti-government in quotation marks. They do not talk much about these roots. Few even know them. We need to go back in time about 400 years to find this success. They succeeded only because the term jurisdiction in quotation marks was still well understood at that time as meaning in quotation marks. All right, let me just read this right. I'm sorry. Let me just read this right. It was well understood at that time, meaning open quote, oath spoken, close quote, open quote, juris, close quote, in the original Latin meaning is open quote, oath, close quote, open quote, diction, close quote, as everyone knows, means open quote, spoken, close quote. The protest obviously did not happen here. It occurred in England. Given the origins of our law are traced there, most of the relevant facts in this matter will still be applicable in this nation. Here's what happened. All right, so first off, right off the bat, I'm reading that and I'm saying, why are we talking about England? We don't live in England. But then they said, okay, but our law traces back there. All right, I'm kind of sort of following you. Yeah, the law traces back there. But then they break away from English law? I mean, that was kind of the point, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't have rebelled. I don't know, just questions. But this is how I read, y'all. When I'm reading something, I'm questioning even that. You know, take it in is great and all that is another idea, but always ask questions, man. All right, so what we got next? Give the origins of the. Here's what happened: printing presses. The Bible had just recently been put into print. To that time, only 3 churches owned copies. due to the extreme high cost of paper. Contrary to what you've been taught, it was not the invention of movable type that led to printing this and other books. That concept had been around for a very long time. It just had no application. Printing wastes some paper. Until paper prices fell, it was cheaper to write books by hand than to print them with movable type. The handwritten versions were outrageously costly, procurable only by those with extreme wealth, churches, crowns, and the nobility. The wealth of the nobility was attributable to feudalism. Feud is the Old English for oath. The nobility, I'm sorry, let me read that again. Open quote, feud, close quote, is Old English for, open quote, oath, close quote. The nobility held the land under the crown, but unimproved land itself, save to the hunter and gatherer, is rather useless. Land is useful for farming, so that is how the nobility obtained wealth. No, they did not push a plow, they had servants to do it. The nobility would not sell their land, nor would they lease it, they rented it. Ever pay rent without a lease? Then you know that if the landlord raised the rent, you had no legal recourse. You could move out or pay. But what if you had no way to move out? Then you'd have to feel, then you'd have a feel for what feudalism was all about. Okay, so they give us a little background on feudalism and what it is basically, and from what I'm gathering is that basically the nobility, the people who said they were in charge, um, stayed in charge by keeping the people who were on the land working the land for them. So it was like a pre. I don't want to. Never mind. I won't even bring it up. Let's just keep reading. Servitude and oath. A tenant was not a freeman. He was a servant to the landlord, the noble. In order to have access to the land to farm it, the noble required the tenant kneel before him, hat in hand, swear an oath of fealty and allegiance, and kiss his ring, extending that oath and that last act to the heirs of his estate. That oath established a servitude. The tenant then put his plow to the fields. The rent was a variable. In good growing years, it was very high. In bad years, it fell. The tenant was a subsistence farmer, keeping only enough of the produce of his labors just to sustain him and his family. Rent was actually an income tax. The nobleman could have demanded 100% of the productivity of his servant, except under the common law, a servant was akin to livestock. He had to be fed, not well fed, just fed, same as a horse or cow. And like a horse or cow, one usually finds it to his benefit to keep it fed so that the critter is productive. Thus, the tenant was allowed to keep some of his own productivity, liken it to a personal and like it to personal independent deductions. So what they're saying, in my opinion, here is that the way that English common law used to work was the person who worked the land, even in a good time, if he worked the land really good and was able to get it to produce, excuse me, sorry, able to get it to produce, he could not keep any of the extra produce. He was only allowed to keep what kept him and his family alive when working, because under the English law, it was not his land, it was the nobility's land. So if he didn't like the setup, he could just get out. So what people did, because they didn't have anywhere else to go, obviously, is work the land and hope that they produce, that the produce came out well. So that way their nobility could make some money and, you know, give them the crumbs. All right, where are we at? Oh, when they say liken it to personal independent deductions, I believe, and this is my opinion, I believe what they're saying is today we get tax returns. So on your tax return, if you have children, there are certain things that you can deduct from your having to pay, and there are certain things that will give you a credit. So like on your tax return, if I know I remember doing this when my children were younger, you would put down how many children you had, and they would give you a credit for each child. And if the credit is greater than the tax that you owe, then you would get a refund. So I believe that's what they're talking about here. We would liken it to a tax refund. So you work all year, they take the taxes out. At the end of the year, they give you a credit for whatever it is that you've done throughout the year. Maybe it's an earned income credit or a child tax credit. There, business you've hired some people maybe on the spectrum, and that gives you a credit. Um, but those credits, if they outweigh your taxes, would afford you a refund. So in my opinion, the authors are likening that situation of being a servant underneath a noble to our situation here, where we're working, and then at the end of the year, yay, I get a tax return, and I get my little return, and I'm happy because I have food. Okay, let's keep going. Um, Journeyman, the freemen of the realm, primarily the tradesmen, swore no such oaths, nor owed such fealty. They knew it. They taught their sons the trade. So they had also. Hmm? This is not a typo. Okay, I'm reading this like 4 times to make sure I got it right. It said the way it reads is they taught their sons the trade, so they had also be free when grown. I just gonna that's look, we read in the book. I'm reading what's there, okay? Occasionally, they took on an apprentice under a sworn contract of indenture from his father. His parents made a few coins, but the kid was the biggest beneficiary. He would learn a trade. He would never need to become a tenant farmer. He would keep what he earned. He was only apprenticed for a term of years, most typically about 7. The tradesmen did not need adolescents. They needed young men strong enough to pull their own weight. They did not take anyone under 13. By age 21, an apprentice would have learned enough to practice the craft. That is when the contract expired. He was then called a journeyman. Had he made a journey? No. But if you pronounce the word, it is journeyman. He was man, formerly knee, bound by an oath, jur. He would then go to work for a master craftsman. The pay was established, but he could ask for more if he felt he was worth more. Um, where's that? At? The shucks, dang it, Musa, you made me lose my place. Right now, Musa, we're not doing no co-hosting. This is not a regular live like that. We're not doing the panel or nothing like that, Musa. We just literally reading this book right here, The Art of Passing the Buck, and that's what we're doing. So I don't need a co-host right now, but thank you, brother. Uh, where are we? Oh shucks, where was I at? Dang it. Okay, here we go. The pay was established, but he could ask for more if he felt like he was worth more. And he was free to quit. Pretty normal, eh? Yes, in our society, that is the norm. But some 400 years ago, these men were the exceptions, not the rule. At some point, if the journeyman was good at the trade, he would be recognized by the market as a master craftsman, and people would be begging him to take their children as apprentices so they might learn from him, become journeymen, and keep what they earned when manumitted at age 21. And it has a note here at manumitted telling me to go down. So I'm going to go down and read what that is. Manumitted. Manumitted is releasing or delivering one person from the power or control of another. Black's Law Dictionary, fourth edition. Okay, so then I'm gathering from that the author wants me to understand that those people who, at least 400 years ago, were journeymen, were able to become free from their oath, being underneath the craft, a master craftsman. They were able to be free from that oath at the age of 21. So that's why they put that manumitted there. The oath of the tenant ran for life. Okay, so this is juxtaposed. They showing you the difference. The tenant, his oath, that to his landlord was for life because he couldn't get up and go anywhere. You know, he couldn't take his trade with him because what he was working the land, and he couldn't take the land with him, and he couldn't take the produce of the land with him. So he was stuck. Whereas the journeyman could move with his craft. He could go anywhere he wanted. As soon as his oath ended at 21. The oath of the apprentice's father ran only for a term of years. Still, oaths were important on both sides. In fact, the tradesmen at one point established guilds. It means gold, as a protection against the potential of governments attempting to bind them into servitude by compelled oaths. I just learned something, but I will double check on that. The word is saying here, the authors are saying here that the word guild means gold, and that it was a protection against government overreach. That piques my attention because I immediately thought of like the Screen Actors Guild, you know. But I also know that in the trades and plumbing, I've heard of I've heard of the word guild being used there too. So I'm gonna have to do my own research on the side and see if guild does indeed mean gold, and is that why they use it to describe what they're doing. Okay, where we at? When an apprentice became a journeyman, he was allowed a membership in the guild only by swearing a secret oath to the guild. He literally swore on earth, and excuse me, he literally swore to serve gold and only gold. He swore he would work only for pay. So once so sworn, any other oath of servitude would be a perjury of that oath. He bound himself for life to never be a servant, saved by the very benevolent master, gold. Incidentally, the Order of the Free and Accepted Masons is a remnant of one of these guilds. The Masonic oath is a secret. The Masons would love to have you think the G in the middle of their logo stands for God. One obvious truth is that it stands for gold. And again, this is the writer's perspective. So if I'm reading this, I'm looking all of it up. I'm chasing every lead down. I'm not going to just accept what they give me because they said so. It's their point of view, which is good. That reading is great. Reading is fundamental. But go past that. All right. Definitely read, then ask questions. All right. Um, so that's something I'm again putting on the back burner. So I got to look up guild, and I also got to look up the G inside of the Masonic crest, I guess, and see if that G means see if that means gold or not, or what do they say the G means. All right, joint resources. Then the Bible came into print. The market for this tome was not the wealthy. They already had a handwritten copy, nor was it the tenants. They were far too poor to make this purchase. The market was the tradesmen, and the book was still so costly that it took the combined life savings of siblings to buy a family Bible. Excuse me. The other reason the tradesmen were in the market was they had also been taught how to read as part of their apprenticeship. As contractors, they had to know how to do that. Other than the families of the super rich and the priest, no one else knew how to read. Swear no oaths. These men were blown away when they read Jesus' command against swearing oaths. Matthew 5:33 through 37. This was news to them. For well over a millennium, they had been trusting the church, originally just the Church of Rome, but now also the Church of England, that they had been telling them everything they needed to know in that book. And then they found out that Jesus said, swear no oaths. Talk about an eye opener. Imagine seeing a conspiracy revealed that went back over 1,000 years. Without oaths, there would have been no tenants laboring for the nobility and receiving mere subsistence in return. The whole society was premised on oaths. The whole society claimed it was Christian, yet it violated the very principal command of Christ. And the tradesmen had done it too by demanding sworn contracts of indenture for apprentices and giving their own oaths to the guilds. They had no way of knowing that was prohibited by Jesus. They were angry, livid, might be a better term. The governments had been the governments had seen this coming. What could they do? Ban the book? The printing would simply move underground, and the millennium-long conspiracy would be further evidenced in that banning. They came up with a better scheme. We now call it the Reformation. And again, this is the author's perspective on historical events. Hold on, I gotta drink something. I didn't realize I was gonna be this thirsty. You know what? Let me stop drinking this carbonated beverage. It's probably making me more thirsty. All right. I don't have no timer on here. I don't even know how long I've been gone. All right. Where was we at? Well, yes, we now call it the Reformation. In an unprecedented display of you what unanimity. That is incorrect. Okay, in an unprecedented display of unanimity, the governments of Europe adopted a treaty. This treaty would allow anyone the state right of founding a church. The church would be granted a charter. It only had to do one very simple thing to obtain that charter. It had to agree to the terms of the treaty. Buried in those provisions, most of which were totally innocuous, was a statement that the church would never oppose the swearing of lawful oaths. Jesus said none. The church all said and still say none except. Whom do you think is or was right? To show their absolute displeasure with those who had kept this secret for so long, they refused to give anyone in church or state any respect. Black Hats and the Quaker Rebellion. Okay, I think we're finally getting to the Quakers. Remember, we came here from, we hadn't even started reading the book yet. We got to one of the preface pages, and it told us about how the authors were deeply impressed by the Quakers. And this is answering the question of what the heck does the Quakers have to do with this? So, Black Hats and the Quaker Rebellion. The tradesmen got even angrier. They had already left the Church of England, but with every new Reformed church still opposing the clear words of Christ, there was no church for them to join or fund or found. They exercised the right of assembly to discuss the Bible. Some of them preached it on street corners using their right of freedom of speech, but they could not establish a church which followed Jesus' words, for that would have required assent to that treaty which opposed what Jesus had commanded. To show their absolute displeasure with those who had kept this secret for so long, they refused to give anyone in the church or state any respect. So, again, this is just my opinion of what I'm reading. The author is saying basically, when they read, when the tradesmen, the journeymen and the tradesmen, the craftsmen, when they read the Bible, they began to understand that they should not make any oaths, and their entire society was based on oath making. So when they read that, they felt deceived by the church, and they felt as if though there was no one they could trust because the church at that time was the power. They were the government. So they felt like they couldn't trust the government, basically. And that's where we are now. So it was the custom to, hold on, it was the custom to doff one's hat when he entered when he encountered a priest or official. Okay. So, okay. Let me just finish reading it before I start explaining. I'm cutting myself off. All right. It was the custom to doff one's hat when he encountered a priest or official. They started wearing big, ugly black hats just just so the most myopic of these claimed superiors would not miss the fact that the hat stayed on top of their heads. Back then, the term you was formal English, reserved for when you were speaking to a superior. The was a familiar pronoun used among family and friends. So they called these officials the they called these officials only by the familiar pronoun the or by their Christian names, George, Peter, Robert, etc. We call these folk Quakers. That was the name given to them by a judge. One of them told the judge that he would better quake before the Lord God Almighty. The judge, in a display of irreverent disrespect, replied, "Thee are the Quaker here." They found that pretty funny, being such a total misnomer, as you shall soon see. The nickname stuck. So what I'm gathering from that is that, again, the tradesfolk, the people who were literate and were not subservient to anyone, um, they began to have clashes with their government, their Christian government, and because the Christian government was the people in charge, and people normally would take their hat off for them, they stopped doing that just to show the government, I'm not scared of you, and I don't care, I don't respect you, because I find you to be a hypocrite, not somebody who's following the word as it's written, but someone who is in control and yet not actually doing the word. So this is, again, this is what I'm gathering from that. Um, so then apparently there was a court case in which the person was not respecting the judge, and um, the judge said, basically, I'm gonna put the fear of God in you. I'm gonna make you so scared you're gonna be shaken. And the person basically was like saying, nobody but God can make me shake. I'm not scared of you at all. So that's apparently where the name Quaker comes from. Um, and again, I'm reading this, and then I got to go back and do my own research. Okay, let's see. With a huge membership of losses from the Anglican Church, especially from men who had been more charitable to it in the past, the church was technically bankrupt. It was not just the losses from the Quakers. Other people were leaving to join the new Reformed churches elsewhere in Europe. The Roman Church had amassed sufficient assets to weather the storm. Excuse me. The far newer Anglican Church had not, tax without jurisdiction. But the Anglican Church, as an agency of the state, cannot go bankrupt. It becomes the duty of the state to support it in hard times. Parliament did so. It enacted a tax to that end, a nice religious tax, and by current standards, a very low tax, a tithe, 10%. But it made a deadly mistake in that. The Quakers, primarily as tradesmen, recognized this income tax as a tax without jurisdiction, at least so far as they went. As free men, they pointed out, they did not have to pay it, nor provide a return. Absent their oaths establishing this servitude, there was no jurisdiction, and they were right. Despite laws making it a crime to willingly refuse to make a return and pay this tax, none were charged or arrested. So I'm gathering that the author is saying that at this point, again, this is 400 years ago, English law. What they're saying is that because of the feudal structure, because of the way it was set up, these people were automatically free people. They didn't owe anybody any tax, they didn't owe anybody anything. And because they didn't owe anybody anything, if the church, the government at the time, if the church were to say everybody owes this tax, they could say, as a freeman, I don't owe nobody nothing at any time. So go kick rocks. And the author is saying that's indeed what happened, is they refused to pay that tax. And again, this is just this group of people's, I'm gonna call it Mr. Charles. This is Mr. Charles's perspective. Okay, this is their opinion. Uh, all right. Where were we at? If you pay it, no. Okay, none were charged or arrested. That caused the rest of society to take notice. Other folk who had thought the Quakers were extremists suddenly began to listen to them. As always, money talks. These guys were keeping all they earned, while the rest of the uninformed, thinking this tax applied to them, forked over the prescribed 10%. Membership in the Anglican Church fell even further, as did charity to it. The taxes were not enough to offset these further losses. The tithe, income tax, was actually counterproductive to the goal of supporting the church. The members of the government and the churchmen were scared silly. If this movement continued to expand at the current rate, no one in the next generation would swear an oath. Who would then farm the lands of the nobility? Oh, surely someone would, but not as a servant working for subsistence. For subsistence, the land would need to be leased under a contract, with the payment for that used as for that use. Excuse me. With the payment for that use established in the market, not on the unilateral whim of a nobleman. The wealth of the nobility, their fat purses, was about to be greatly diminished, and the Church of England, what assets it possessed, would need to be sold off, with what remained of that church greatly reduced in power and wealth. But far worse was the diminishment of the respect demanded by the priests and the officials. They had always held a position of superiority in the society. What would they do when all society treated them only as equals? Anarchy. The Quakers began to use the term anarchy, but England was a monarchy, not an anarchy. And that was the ultimate solution to the problem, or so those in government thought. There was an aspect of a monarchy that Americans found somewhat incomprehensible, or at least we did 2 centuries ago. The crown has divine right, or at least so it claims. An expression of the divine right of the crown is the power to rule by demand. The crown can issue commands. The king says, jump, and everyone jumps. Why do they jump? Simple. It is a crime not to jump. To willfully fail, a familiar term, to obey, let me read that again. To willfully fail, to obey a crown command, and in quotation, they have a familiar term, is considered to be treason, high treason. The British Crown issued a crown command to the end, to end the tax objection movement. So I'm sorry, I'm really like messing up the words here because I'm reading it to myself and then I'm reading it to y'all at the same time. What I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to go ahead and read these chapters before I read it to y'all, so that way I can read it more fluently and I'm not messing up. So basically, what's happening is, from the author's perspective, Mr. Charles will say, what Mr. Charles is saying here is that the Quakers were saying the monarchy claims that it has the power from God. It's not saying we are the rulers of you just because. It's saying we're the rulers of you because God wants it to be this way. And since God wants it to be this way, when we make a command or we make a rule, anyone who disobeys that rule is actually disobeying God. So pay your taxes because God wants you to pay your taxes. That's basically what they saying here. And what the Quakers were saying was, nah, nah, we don't believe that. We don't believe you. We don't believe, for one, that you even have the power of God to make such a proclamation and command. We don't believe that you actually believe in God because God says don't do this, and you're doing that thing that God said don't do. So that's it in a nutshell. Um, all right, now let's go down some more. We got, did the crown order that everyone shall pay an income tax? No, that was not possible. There was really no jurisdiction. That would have been that would have done nothing to cure the lack of respect. The crown went one better. It ordered that every man shall swear an oath of allegiance to the crown. Damn Christian thing to do, eh? Literally. A small handful of tax objectors obeyed, most refused. It was a simple matter of black and white. Jesus said, swear not at all. They opted to obey him over the crown. So again, this is just coming down to the interpretation of reading the scriptures, and they the Quakers disagreed. They disagreed with the interpretation of the crown at the time, um, with their interpretation. The crown recognizing that it was the power, it was the government over the people, and it was already losing money. The church is already losing money. They basically said, we got to double down on this. We got to rule over the people, or we're going to have anarchy, which is basically there is no rule of law. People are just doing what they want to do. So they felt it within their need, and with they felt like this is what we have to do, is double down. So where we at? Where we at? Okay, a small handful. Oh wait, hold on. No, we said that already. That quickly brought them into court, facing the charge of high treason. An official would take the witness stand, swearing that he had no record of the defendant's oath of allegiance. Then the defendant was called to testify, there being no right to refuse to witness against oneself. He refused to accept the administered oath. That refusal on the record, the court instantly judged him guilty. It took all of 10 minutes. That expedience was essential, for there were another couple hundred defendants waiting to be tried on that day for their own treasons against the crown. In short order, the jails reached their capacity plus, but they were not filled as you would envision them. The men had two. The men had 10 minutes. I'm sorry. The men who had 10 minutes were not there. Their children were. There was a stand-in law allowing for that. There was no social welfare system. The wife and the children of a married man in prison existed on the charity of church and neighbors, and they ceased to exist, starving to death. It was typical for a man convicted of a petty crime to have one of his kids stand in for him for 30 or 90 days. That way, he could continue to earn a living, keeping bread on the table, without the family having to rely on charity. A man convicted, though, of more heinous crimes would usually find that impossible to convince his wife and to allow his children to serve his time. The family would prefer to exist on charity rather than see him back in society. But in this case, the family had no option. The family was churchless. The neighbors were all in the same situation. Charity was non existent for them. The family was destined for quick starvation unless one of the children stood in for the breadwinner. Unfortunately, the rational choice of which child should serve the time was predicated on which child was the least productive to the family earnings. They was living rough in Europe. Sorry about that. That's not in the book. That's just me. But I'm like, yo, hard times. They was living like the whole land was a ghetto. I wonder if that never mind. Let me not ask no question. Let me just keep reading. Okay. That meant nearly the youngest, usually a daughter. A daughter? All right. Let me just keep reading. Thus, the prisons of England filled with adolescent females, serving the life sentences for their dads. Those lives would be short. There was no heat in the jails. They were rife with tuberculosis and other deadly diseases. A strong man might last several years. A small girl measured her remaining time on earth in months. It was a Christian holocaust, a true sacrifice of the unblemished lambs. I gotta stop right there. This was by choice. This was their society. This was not a holocaust. This was not somebody coming to get them. This was the way they were living. All right, never mind. Let me go. Where we at? Uh, Damn, I lost my place. See, just read. Don't have opinions yet. Okay. It was a Christian Holocaust, a true sacrifice of the unblemished lambs. And we must note, completely ignored in virtually every history text covering this era, lest the crown, government, and church be duly embarrassed. Okay, so the author here is saying basically you don't hear about this from the English side because they are embarrassed that they had done this as a practice. This was a normal practice, is what they are saying. Despite the high mortality rate, the jails still overflowed. So the author is saying that there were tons of little girls in these jails. Uh, Man, I definitely got to do some more research. I'm reading this out loud, but I got to look into this, y'all. There was little concern that the daughters would be, I can't read that word, but assaulted in a perverse reproductive way or unalive at the brutality of other prisoners. Man, that's crazy. This is how they was living. And this was feudalism in England. All right, criminals set free. The other prisoners, the real felons, had all been released to make room. Early release was premised only on the severity of the crime. High treason was the highest crime. The murderers, thieves, arsonists, great, how do you say this, TikTok? Can I say grapists? Great people? I think I can say that on TikTok. The people who grape all have been set free. What? Man. All right. All right, Gus. I gotta stop reading. This is getting good. I'm reading it all the way down. All right, here we go. Sorry. Back out loud. Here we go. Where am I at? High treason. High treason was the highest crime. The murderers, thieves, arsonists, people who do grape, all had been set free and had a very profound effect, and that had a very profound effect on commerce. It stopped. There were highwaymen afoot on every road. Thugs and muggers ruled the streets. The sworn subjects of the crown sat behind bolted doors in cold, dark homes, wondering how they would exist when food and water ran out. They finally dared to venture out to attend meetings and to address the situation. At those meetings, they discussed methods to overthrow the crown to which they were sworn. Call that perjury. Call that sedition. Call it by any name. They were going to put their words into actions and soon, or be unalived from starvation or the blade of a thug. Here we should note that chaos and nearly anarchy, no crown. Oh, okay. I like how they just explained that too. Anarchy, no crown. No, so nearly anarchy, no crown came to be as not as the result of refusal to swear oaths, but as a direct result of the governmental demand that people swear them. The followers of Jesus' words did not bring that chaos. Those who ignored that command of Christ brought it. So again, this is Mr. Charles saying, from what they understand, that the whole Quaker movement started because they read these words in the Bible of Jesus, which said, "Swear no oaths," and their society was built on swearing oaths. So it began to crumble because some people decided that they would stop swearing oaths, and that led to the almost anarchy. because of the fact that the crown was gonna force people to swear oaths and jail people if they didn't swear oaths. What ended up happening is pretty much close to anarchy. Everybody doing whatever they wanted to do. Um, all right. Children released. The Crown saw the revolutionary handwriting on the wall and ordered the release of the children and the recapture of real felons before the government was removed from office under force of arms. So basically, their society is falling apart. There is no control. No, everyone's doing what they want to do. The rich people are locking themselves in their little castles and letting whatever come, may. And eventually, the people said, we could just get rid of the monarchy. But before that happened, the monarchy, the crown, said, "No, we got to step in and do what's right here." So let the children go. The courts came up with an odd concept, an affirmation in lieu of oath. That's in quotations. The Quakers accepted that as a victory, an affirmation in lieu of oath. Um, Given what they had been through, that was understandable. However, Jesus also prohibited affirmations, calling the practice an oath by thy head. Funny that he would foresee the legal concept of an affirmation 1600 years before it came to be. Quite a prophecy. Again, this is the author. This is their understanding of that scripture and their understanding of Quakers' understanding of that scripture. Oh my goodness, it just keeps going. But this is where they are. Um, so they're saying that the affirmation it was an acceptable victory, but some people didn't like that either. So American colonies founded. When the colonies opened to migration, the Quakers fled Europe in droves, trying to put as much distance between them they could between themselves and the crown. They had a very rational fear of a repeat of the situation that had put a lot of them here. Oh, all right. That's a typo, but I just read it as they have it. They had a very rational fear of a repeat of the situation that put a lot of them here, enough that they had a very strong influence on politics. They could have blocked the ratification of the Constitution had they opposed it. Some of their demands were incorporated into it, as were some of their concessions, in balance to those demands. Their most obvious influence found in the Constitution is the definition of treason, the only crime defined in that document. The remainder of this article deals with the federal income taxes, which are beyond the scope of this book. All right. We found the complete article at http semicolon // www.chronoontopologos.com /law notes /index /HTML. Note, editing of the original article has been done to provide clarity. All right. That is the completion of Appendix A. Man, that was a lot just to understand where they were coming from, but it was worth it because if you're reading something and you're not, skimming because you're just trying to get through it, you actually want to understand because it's serious. This is how you do it. You go through, you take the time, you look up the footnotes, you see where the person is coming from, what their perspective is, and why they're saying what they're saying. So I'm gathering after reading all of that in Appendix A. I'm going all the way back up to, mind you, we haven't even started reading the book yet. We were in preface pages, and we were on preface page 8. And what Mr. Charles said was They drew on the wisdom and courage of the nation's founders who fought tyranny and sought to preserve privacy. We're especially thankful to the Quakers, see Appendix A, which we did, whose great contribution seems to have been lost in history. It is thanks particularly to those who gave what President Lincoln aptly called in his Gettysburg Address the last full measure of devotion, that we still have the right to contract and thus can write this set of books. Now that I have read that appendix, I can say that I understand why they say that. What they're saying is basically what the Quakers did before this land was established is they stood up for what they believed were righteous principles. And what they believed is that a man, and this is my opinion, guys, what they believe is that a man should not swear an oath to another man. The only person you should be swearing an oath to is to your God or God at that time. This is speaking from a Christian standpoint. They would only be swearing their oaths to Jesus, basically. So, because they believed that or came to understand that as they read the Bible, and that was their understanding, they stood 10 toes on that understanding. We're not swearing no oaths to no men. And the crown's response was tyrannical. You're going to do what I said because I said it, period. And that made them say, we will die before we do that. And what's important is that, well, I guess this is my opinion again. What's important to the authorship is that what those Quakers were willing to do is not only stand on the fact that um, this is how we worship our God, this is how we worship Jesus by keeping what he says and swearing our fealty only to him and not to anyone else, especially someone who doesn't follow his words. We can't follow you. And why that's big is because it's one thing to say, I disagree with you. I like yellow cake, you like chocolate cake, yellow cake is better. That's, neither here nor there, right? But if I say, not only do I like yellow cake, but anyone who makes or eats chocolate cake has to pay more money for it. Well, that would be messed up because now everybody who eats chocolate cake now has to pay more money for the same exact chocolate cake that's in the same box in the same store. That would be messed up, right? And then if someone came to your house, literally knocking on your door, check it, then it's like, oh, they violating, they overreaching, and that's the situation that the author is saying that they were in, where the government is now making rules and overreaching with their power past what they're supposed to do, and we out. So once they had a chance to leave that jurisdiction, that rulership of the crown, they came here. And then next, I'm guessing they kind of skipped over a lot of things, but what they're saying is that when this land was established, or this, not when the land was established, but when they decided to establish a company, a corporation on this land, when they drew up which would be their doctrine or their what do you call it? I can't think. I'm getting tired. Um, I can't think. Not the order of business. Not the business plan. I cannot think. Um, when they drew up what they were going to do or how they're going to run this new thing, this new business, this new principality. When they drew it up, the Quakers or the influence of the Quakers was there because they understood that tyranny is taking away your choice to serve the God of your choice the way you want to serve him. Because what they experienced was someone telling them the proper way to serve God is to pay me. And if you ain't paying me, you ain't serving God. So because they went through that experience, they said, don't let nobody tell you how to serve your God. You should be free to serve your God the way you see fit. Don't let nobody step in between your relationship with God. And that foundational idea is found in the Constitution when they have the separation of church and state, where the state cannot say everybody has to be Christian. And not only do you have to be Christian, you got to be Christian like me Christian, which means spin around 3 times and sit down. And if you can't do that or you refuse to do that, then we're going to punish you. So they basically remove that element, and they put in the element of religious freedom, where you serve your God the way you serve God, just don't harm nobody. You know what I mean? But the government itself cannot come in and say, "This is how you shall do it." Those founding ideas are there. So now, after reading that appendix, I totally understand where the author's coming from, um, and how they are at least finding those ideas, those founding ideas, to help them write this book about contracts, because that's what we're coming back to. Contract is an oath. When you sit down and say, "Me and you gonna do this thing," you write your name down and you buy that car or you buy that phone, that contract, it's the same exact thing. It's an oath. You're saying, "I'm gonna do this," right? So I can see why they drew on the knowledge and the wisdom of the Quakers. All right, I think I've been doing this for an hour. I think this been an hour. I did not set no type of timer or nothing. Analyzing the historical context of the American Revolution, answer questions. What? Oh, the AI is listening to me and it is analyzing what I'm saying. And that's, yeah, I guess this is what it is. All right. Um, all right. So what I'm gonna do is that was the preface up to preface page. What's that? Page 8. Yes. So that was up to preface page 8. Tomorrow I'll come back and do another hour, and we will start with preface page number 9. I'm gonna have to come on here earlier so I'm not tired and messing up the reading, y'all. But yeah, I'll try to get on here. I'm gonna say 6. I'll say 6 o'clock. That'll be like 8 o'clock on the East Coast. So I don't want to say 5 because I get off at 5, and I might want to relax before I get on here. Um, I mean, between 5 and 6 tomorrow, y'all. Between 5 and 6, I'll jump on here again. We'll pick up with The Art of Passing the Buck, Secrets of Wills and Trust, Volume 1, and we'll pick up at the forward or preface page number 9. All right. See y'all tomorrow. Oh, you're welcome, Orlando. Orlando. Thanks, man. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Yeah. And also on the YouTube, on the StreamYard. Thanks everybody for coming out. Oh, there go my counter right there. I've been live for an hour and 26 minutes. Yeah, so yeah, YouTube, same thing. Tomorrow I'm gonna do it between I'm gonna try to I'll be on by 6 o'clock. Put it that way. I'll be on by 6 mountain time. All right. So see y'all tomorrow. Thanks for stopping in. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream.